Came on a little bit early because I wanted to make sure that this is working. They changed a lot of what I was used to from last year on here. So it says live, it says we're going. So if you are here, go ahead and sign in. Just say hi or something in the comments so that I know who's here. It says 8 people, but I'm not sure who. And I want to make sure that it's working. So we will wait a little bit till 8 o'clock. I just wanted to start a couple minutes early because of that. So if you're just showing up, I'm a few minutes early. Go ahead and make a comment so that I know that it's working. You can see me, you can hear me, all that good stuff. This is the first time I'm using this new interface that they have here on YouTube, so I'm a little nervous about it. Before I had to use some software and stuff for that. I do have one question already lined up. If you noticed, I tweeted if there's a question that you want me to start with. So I'm going to start with the Twitter questions that people sent me on that one feed that I sent, tweet that I sent out there. You can reply with a question. I have a feeling we're going to kind of do some jumping around. So if you're here early, nobody's saying anything in the comments, but it looks like there's 12 people here. So if you could just put a comment so I know that everything's working. I'm getting a little nervous about that. Okay. You're going to want your study guides, obviously. OBS. Oh, Linda. Okay, good. Hi, Linda. You're the first one. You get the bonus points for being first today on the live show. Everybody else is just shy, I guess. I think probably you're going to want your study guides and your book, obviously. Hi, Kayla. I've got some water and some lozenges. I started coughing really bad after school or this afternoon from this cold I've got, and I hope I can make it through. Give it 2 more minutes because it's only 7:58. There's already a question lined up. Andrea asked me about the section 2. Bye. Mr. Ramos is going to the gym. Hope you don't get rained out over there or anything like last night. Senior class shirts are now for $15. What do they look like? All grown up. Really now. Hi, Elise. Okay, good. Well, I know if 3 of you are in here that it could be working for all 15, so there's just 12 shy people. Hopefully they're going to have some questions. The comments don't seem to be working out for you. Are you logged into your school Google? Bye. You have to be signed into your school Google, I think. If the comments aren't working, I'm going to monitor Twitter. So you can just also put, as long as you can see the feed, or if you want to watch it later after it makes a video, then you can just tweet your questions on the one tweet that I sent out. Just, what is it called? Subtweet comment thing. And I'll answer them also from Twitter. So if you have questions, we can get them either way, either in the chat or Twitter. All right, it's 8 o'clock. I'm going to turn off my notifications. So I was thinking maybe the first thing we would do is start with study guide 1. I know that Andrea has a question on the section 2 study guide. So, but I mean, we can do that. We can jump around a lot, or we can kind of like talk about section 1 and then talk about section 2. Bernice. I don't know. Itzel, did you get in? Hopefully. If not, just tweet me because I got that one tweet saying that you were having trouble anyway. So you can send me a tweet, and I will answer questions from both places. And I don't even have an assistant. All right, let's get started. Let's start with the section 1 stuff. Just, I mean, like, you can skip around on section 1 or the book if you want, but that way we can kind of wrap up section 1 and then move on to section 2. And I'll take Andrea's question first when we get to section 2. So I think that people are signed in through the school email is on restricted mode in the comments. Oh, Linda, Kayla, Elise, Bernice, are you guys signed into your school account, or do you have your own Gmail account and you're signed into that? Maybe you shouldn't sign into your school Gmail, but you can watch, right? Even if you can't comment? Yeah, okay. All right, so if you're watching but you can't comment, if you have another Google account, go ahead and sign into that. I guess you know how they are at school. Everything's restricted. Yeah. Either do that or tweet me questions and I'll monitor the Twitter also. You can just do it. You don't have to make your own tweet. You can just comment on the tweet that I already made. Hopefully that makes sense. So let's start with section 1. I'm watching the Twitter, so if there's anything on Twitter that you're asking me about section 1, anything on the study guide that you want me to start with, you can ask me questions like, just to talk about one of the items that's on here. You can ask me, how is that going to be tested, if that's going to be on the test. Not everything that's on the questions down here is on the test. All the characters are on the test. You can see I already made the test and I highlighted all the characters as I put them on the test. So, but these things are just to get you thinking more deeply about the text, but you know, some of these ideas are on the test. So, oh, somebody's texting me. You can't do that. I'll answer that later. Okay, so let's take questions on study guide 1. Any sections you want me to talk about? And it's a shame that you can't use your school account for that. I'm on my school account. Maybe mine has fewer restrictions or something. Okay, anything from study guide 1? Yeah, Linda, I see. Yeah, okay. It looks like you can only comment if you sign in on your own Gmail account, but it's okay if you don't have your own Gmail account. Just, go to Twitter or tweet me, or I guess I could monitor email too. I can do that. I think I can flip back and forth. Yeah, I can flip back to email too. Actually, I think I'll just pop that tab out. Uh-oh, heavy rain near Westlake, Texas. It's always about this time of night, I think. Okay, I'm just going to put an email thing over here, see if any come up. And go back to the live. I know this is taking a little bit of time to set up. Okay. You can, if you can't comment in the YouTube, then you can go ahead and email me a question. You can tweet a question, whatever works for you. I'm getting the idea that I have questions, but on section 2. Okay, I don't think anybody has questions on section 1, to be honest with you. I've been kind of waiting for it, but we can come back to it later. Let's just move to section 2 because it seems like all the questions are on that section. So let me take Andrea's question first. I have a cuckoo clock, so if you hear the cuckoo, it's my clock. So that's just how it works. It's a Jones family thing, like my family. Okay, so Andrea's question is to go over question 3 on the section 2 study guide. So if you have your section 2 study guide, question 3 is about the Finn saga. It's a long digression. Make sure you have notes on the basic events and have a theory about why this legend is included in Beowulf. Okay. So if you go to your book, the Finn saga, it's easy to find because it's in italics and it's broken at the caesura. I'm going to talk about that when we get to section 2. But that's why it's split like that on page 71. So on page 71 starts the Finn saga. This is told before Grendel's mother shows up with her revenge. So they come and they sing it says to please the hero. So it's all in honor of Beowulf. But there has to be a reason that they're telling this story. First of all, it's a revenge story, right? There's a lot of revenge in this story, and Grendel's mother's attacks are also based on revenge. and Beowulf going after her afterwards is based on revenge. So it's sort of a foreshadowing of all the revenge that's coming up right after this story is told, and the Shope sings it, and so on and so forth. It's good to think about the purpose for these because there usually is a reason. But they are historical people. So the second reason that it's important is because there's that fact that we've talked about with the lack of written language. So everything's oral. They're trying a lot to repeat things. If you're just joining me and you can't comment, it's because they're blocking you if you're on your school account. So you can either tweet me or you can email me if you have questions, and I'll look at all those things while we're working on it today. Okay, so you should have a basic idea of what happens in the Finn saga. I know that we talked about that more in other classes, in some classes than other classes, so I'll just go through the basics, right? So it starts with the fact that Hildebur gets married off to Finn. Hildebur is a Swedish princess back, some time. I mean, she's a Danish princess back before Hrothgar. And she gets married off to Finn, who is from Friesland. So the reason that they get married off is probably a treaty. People didn't marry, especially people who were wealthy, for any other reason than to appease some sort of political element. So Hildebur gets married off to Finn, probably to keep there from being a war. And it doesn't really work, though, because some years later, the Danes still have a grudge. So they go to visit Hildebur, and they attack anyway, even though there's this treaty and this marriage and all that stuff. Nef is Hildebur's brother, and he's the leader of this group. And he and his men attack Finn and the Frisians, and some people say Frisians, tomato, tomato. And Finn is killed. And so this is a huge, big problem, and it goes against their treaty. And so the Danes are supposed to leave, but they can't because winter pops up, and their ships can't get back home. They're frozen in. So they have to spend the winter there in Friesland. I don't know if that's supposed to be a pun, because they're frozen, get it? And they have to stay the winter there. So they make a treaty just for the winter that they're not going to attack each other. That must have been a really awkward winter because they have to stay with the people in their homes or their, halls or their barns or whatever. And so that goes okay until the spring. This guy Hengist is the second in command after Nef, because Nef gets killed. Oh, you know what? I think I said Finn gets killed. He doesn't. He gets killed the second time around. Nef gets killed, the king of the Danes. I think I'm messing this up. Anyway, so Hengist takes over. He's like his right-hand man, and he makes the treaty and all that stuff. And when spring comes, the Danes are supposed to get on their ships and head back. But what happens is this one warrior guy brings this sword to Hengist as kind of a reminder that we can't leave without getting retribution for the death of our king. So that part is on. It goes on for a few pages. He gets him this sword called Dazzle the Duel, page 81, and gives it to Hengist, basically saying we have to get revenge. And they do. They have another battle before they leave. They break the treaty, kind of like for the second time, and they kill Finn. And so Hildebur, then her brother, her husband, and her son are all dead in these revenge battles. And it really didn't serve anybody. There's nobody who gets a good side out of it. And it's kind of a commentary on that revenge mode, the idea that avenging people might be heroic. And even Beowulf says that. He tells Hrothgar, don't grieve, go get revenge, when he's talking about Grendel's mother. But ultimately, in this example at least, there's no benefit that's gained from it. And so probably the story is told for a couple different reasons. The fact that there's a A revenge story is also the grief of Hildebert, which we could maybe equate with Grendel's mother and her grief at the loss of her son, and the history being retold, all those things. So hopefully that's a good retelling. I'm sorry that I messed up a little bit on the characters. You know what I'll do? After I get off of the video, I'll just type up a little like play-by-play of the Finn saga for you, like a little outline, and I'll put it up on the weblog or something for you, so that maybe that will make up for my mistake. I'm going to blame it on my cold medication. All right, more questions are coming in. Everybody who has questions about section 2. All right, number 10 on section 2. Create a list that compares and contrasts Beowulf's battle with Grendel and his battle with Grendel's mother. Okay, well, I'm not going to do that for you, but I will talk about it. So if you want to work on it, or you go to where you had it in your notes, then you can, maybe jot a few things down. There's the obvious stuff, right? There's the obvious stuff like one happens in a mead hall and the other one happens in a cave. I mean, that's kind of like basic stuff. You can go with the plot and the setting and those things. One is with a boy monster and one is with a girl monster. Oh, you don't want me to talk about number 10. I just got started on it. I'll finish up real fast on number 10 and then I'll move on to number 11, because maybe there's somebody out there that wants me to talk about number 10, but they can't make a comment or tweet it or send me an email for some reason. Okay, yes, finish. Okay. So I think those are the basics. Obviously, he's in familiar territory with the battle with Grendel. He's in unfamiliar territory with Grendel's mother. All that stuff is, kind of basic. I think on a deeper level, we can look at things like Beowulf ripping off Grendel's arm is heroic, and obviously he wins the battle through sheer strength. But the strength that he exhibits with Grendel's mother, not just the strength of his body, but the strength of his persistence and his strength, even though she is attacking him and she's probably stronger than he is. He almost loses at a couple different points. So the strength that he has to have with Grendel's mother is sort of exponentially greater than what he has to have when he fights Grendel. It's almost an easy fight with Grendel. It's kind of like, wrestle, wrestle, snap, run, blood, done. Grendel's mother, there's a lot of different scenes and moments when he's pinned down and when she's got him by the claws. She's ripping at him and all of that. You could also say, sort of on a deeper level than plot or setting, that she's got a better reason to fight. She's probably expecting him. She probably also wants to face him because he's the person who killed her boy. I don't know if she would know that. Depends on how much monster you think she has and how much human you think she has and so on. But she is vengeful and angry, and everybody knows that when you're angry, you're a lot more violent than when you're just showing up for dinner, which is basically what Grendel was doing. Grendel was surprised in an unfamiliar territory, and Grendel's mother was not surprised on her home territory. So she's got her advantage. She's got a lot of other advantages too. I recommend that on number 10, you go back and look at all the things that happened during that battle that make it difficult for Beowulf. And, she's got a lot on her side. So the fact that Beowulf comes out of that fight with Grendel's mother as the victor kind of elevates him even more as a hero than the battle with Grendel, just because it was such a tough battle. Without a villain, you don't have a hero. And the greater the villain, the greater the hero who defeats him or her. So I feel like that question makes you look beyond you should be looking just beyond, like the superficial things. Superficial things are great, but, look a little deeper on those. Hi, Daniel. Okay, I know that wasn't really the one that you meant. So the next one we can talk about, Itzel wants me to talk about number 5 on section 2. So it says, locate Hrothgar's description of Ashera, characterize the king's relationship with this character and his relation to his death. Okay, so I think it's pretty obvious. If you go to that section, it's after the Finn saga that we were just talking about. She attacks there on page 87, but Hrothgar isn't there. Beowulf isn't there either when she attacks. Beowulf is somewhere else, they say. Eileen, I do see your email, so I'm going to get to you. So if you're wondering if that came in, I do see that. If you're having trouble commenting and you can only watch, you can email me a question. You can tweet me a question. I sent a tweet where you can just respond with a question. I know that there's an issue with the school account. So, okay, so go to the part where, well, in 91 it says Beowulf was elsewhere. It never says where he was. He's probably tired from the battle of Grendel and all the feasting and all that stuff afterwards. But after Grendel's mother takes Ashera, they bring Beowulf on page 93. It says Beowulf at the very top. Beowulf was quickly brought to the chamber. They explain to him what happened. And Hrothgar shows up also about halfway down the page. And he sees the, loss of his friend Ashera. And he says, rest, what is rest? Sorrow has returned. Alas, for the Danes, Ashera is dead. He goes on about how important he was. Ashera was everything the world admires in a wise man and a friend. Then this roaming killer came in a fury and slaughtered him in Herat, where she is hiding, glutting on the corpse and glorying in her escape. I cannot tell. He says, I don't know where she went, but he's obviously racked with pain. He does honor his friend by saying he died in battle, paid with his life, and so on. If you turn the page, he goes on for quite some time. Talks about where she might live. There's rumors about she lives in the moors and they've seen creatures out there prowling, and so on. He says a few miles from here. The whole page is him, and he talks about how it's not a good place. Everybody knows that's a horrible spot. It reminds me a little bit, if you've ever seen Lion King, you know how in Lion King there's the whole desert area where all the animals are, and then there's that area of darkness that nobody's supposed to go. That's not on the test, but I think that it's kind of like what they're describing here. Hrothgar's talking about how there's this weird wind and everything's dangerous and there's demons and weird sounds and so on and so forth. So he is clearly upset at the loss of his friend. We're on number 3 on the section 2, number 5 on the section 2 study guide. And his reaction is pretty emotional. Beowulf has to calm him down and remind him that he's the king. So the next one, I did 5, question 11. In line 1700 to 1784, this is section 2, question 11. Hrothgar addresses Beowulf. What is his purpose for this speech? What are his main points? I think you should be able to use your skills at rhetorical analysis to do that, but I will talk about it a little bit because Mr. Ramos went to the gym, and if he was here, he would probably think you could do that on your own, but I will help you. Okay, so 1700 is on page 117. Okay, so this is after Beowulf has defeated Grendel's mother, and Beowulf has returned with his prizes from that battle. One prize is the hilt. In the battle, he finds this huge sword, and it ends up being the thing that can kill her. It's like a magical, like the giant sword, sort of the giant people or something. And he uses it. It's super big, and he uses it to, basically decapitate her. And her blood is so caustic that it melts the blade of this big sword. But the hilt, the handle part, the handle and the little part that goes across, like if this is the handle that I'm holding on to, there's, in those old-fashioned swords, there's a bar part. That whole part's called the hilt. And that's all that's left. The rest of it melt like icicles, the text says. And he's got this handle, it's carved because it's ancient, and he keeps that. He also goes to Grendel's body and beheads him and brings his head up because he wanted his head to begin with. He wasn't really super satisfied with that arm. I probably wouldn't have been either. So Beowulf's explaining all this and giving it to Hrothgar, and Hrothgar looks at it on page 117. And there's like a legend on it. There's this story of the first flood and this tribe of giants and so on and so forth. And then Beowulf speaks to Hrothgar speaks to Beowulf and talks about this guy Heremod. He says, I stand by our friendship, not like Heremod, who, nobody really liked him or could trust him. And he sort of contrasts, I think there's a note that he contrasts Beowulf with this guy Heremod. I didn't put Heremod on the study guide, so I'm not really going to talk about that part. I don't want you to get wrapped up in that because it's not on the test. But on line 1723, Hrothgar says, so learn from this, in other words, Heremod's example, and understand true values. I who tell you have wintered into wisdom. So this is like what old people say, right? When people who are older than you, a generation or two generations, they say, look, learn from my mistakes, learn from what I know, and you won't have to do these things, right? You've heard that before, I'm sure. He talks about how it's a great wonder how Almighty God, and I'm on page 119, in his magnificence favors our race with rank and scope and the gift of wisdom. His sway is wide. So he talks about the morality of God and how God permits us to have this wonderful life and so on. Everybody listens to the hero. The hero and the king are, promised greatness. And there's an important line that you should mark there. We're looking at number 11 on the second study guide. On line 1734, God permits him, the king or the hero, to lord it in many lands until the man in his unthinkingness forgets that it will ever end for him. And that's one of the main points that Hrothgar gives in that speech. He goes on for quite some time. And he says, what happens is you get so used to your power, and you get so used to your heroic status that you can forget that it's a gift. And you can forget that you're going to die. And you can forget that you're mortal. And so he warns him against that. And probably from his own experience, you forget that you can lose it all if a monster comes to attack your people, and you can't do that. What line was what? That I just read? Or Lisa's asking me. 1733 on page 119. He permits him to lord it in many lands until the man in his unthinkingness forgets that will ever end for him. He indulges in his desires. So this hero goes on and on. I hope that's the line you're talking about, Arlise. He goes on and on in his life, and he thinks, he runs his life as the hero thinking that he's going to live forever. But Hrothgar's like, I'm here to tell you, there will be one foe that you cannot defeat, and that is death. And he says to Beowulf on 121, O flower of warriors, beware of that trap, right in the middle of the page. Choose, dear Beowulf, the better part, eternal rewards, right? Instead, do the things that would make God happy. Instead of trying to be a hero here on earth with all of your, heroic deeds, also pay attention to your immortal soul. And this is the Christian influence that we have on the text. So Hrothgar is saying, do not give way to pride. Do not let these things take you away from your true purpose, which is to live for God. He talks about it on the bottom of 121. Just as I ruled this country like a hero, like a king, and then Grendel showed up and put me in my place. Something's going to happen, and you just have to watch out for that. Don't waste your life just looking for the praise. Spend your time so that you can have heavenly glory. A Viking would never have thought of that because Vikings weren't Christian, but so that's the advice that he gives to him. It's really beautiful and poetic. He says, I can look upon my life in triumph at the last, on page 123 at the top. Take your place then with pride and pleasure and move to the feast. Tomorrow morning, our treasure will be shared. So he kind of ends by saying, I'm going to give you more treasure tomorrow and for your victory and so on and so forth. So he's teaching him a lesson that Grendel taught him. Mm-hmm. Hopefully that answers. Sorry, I'm really trying to keep my cough at bay. That should answer number 11. Okay, where are we? Can you explain what we're going to need to know about the Anglo-Saxon language and what we need to study on the paper? Oh yeah, so this one. We can go back to section 2 if we want in a minute. So on this sheet, I think it might be reversed. I don't know, but you have it. On this one, you're going to need to know dates. So I would know basically the dates that Anglo-Saxon / Old English, it's sometimes called Old English, it says at the top, existed. So we roughly think that Old English as a language started around 450. This page uses the term CE. I don't know if you use that in your history classes or not, but you may at college use that terminology. CE stands for Common Era, and it's the equivalent of AD. Anno Domini, which is, after Christ. The whole world is not Christian, so for people who are trying to be politically correct, they use CE for Common Era and BCE for before Common Era, which would be, like BC. So if you see CE, it's just the equivalent of AD because it's more politically correct. So around 450 with the influence of the Germanic tribes, and then there's this little timeline. You should probably know the different influences on the language because languages grow and change over time. And you should know the sort of end date that we think we can kind of look back and say Old English was on its way out and something else was on its way in. It's Middle English that's on its way in 1066. There's a battle. There's a battle of Hastings that changes everything for the monarchy. And after 1066, Britain has a series of French kings, and so for a long time, there wasn't much English spoken in the court. There was French, but we're not on that section yet. We're just talking about Old English. I would also take a look at here, just sort of, this part kind of outlines the different loan words that we've taken from different languages. I would know which language, you don't need to know the loan words that are here, but I think you should know which languages contributed to the Anglo-Saxon. And then at the bottom, you should know some of these letter forms that we don't use anymore. You see them on the other side of your page, right? Like over here. We don't have some of those letter forms anymore. You do not need to know the alphabet. I didn't write the test in Anglo-Saxon or anything. It's going to be a fairly challenging test, but I didn't write it in Anglo-Saxon. So this is just, so you can look at the language and the alphabet, maybe, see how it's changed. But I didn't put anything from the back side. I just think it's an interesting feature. Okay, so that was Linda's question. Section 2, question 7. NC, is that Nate? I think that's Nate. Okay, my guess. Section 2, question 7. If you're just tuning in, I know there are some problems with the commenting. I had thought that you had to be on your school account, but it turns out the school accounts won't let you comment. So if you have your own Gmail account or Google account, you might want to sign into that. If you don't, it's okay. You can send me a tweet with your question, or you can email me. I already have a couple lined up on email. Hi, Nate. I thought so. I knew it wasn't North Carolina because they're busy evacuating. Anyway, so you can still ask me questions if you email and tweet. I'm going to get to those in just a second. Okay, so right now I'm on section 2, question 7. Which is identify the effects of the description of the mirror that the mirror has on the reader. Okay, that's back on page 99. And if you go back to 99, when all the men go down to find Grendel's mother, they use the bloody gore of Ashera to locate her in the mirror, because she takes his body and kind of like devours it while she's running. And so there's glops of his flesh and blood and guts and stuff. And they use that to trail back to where she lives. And Hrothgar's already described it as a pretty horrible place. And, that doesn't make it sound too great. When they get there, they see his head there on the shore. And, it's all really gruesome. There's a description starting on page 99 when they get there. Maybe starting, maybe that second part on page 99, everybody gazed as the hot gore kept wallowing up. So they look at the cliff, they look at the swamp, and it's like covered with reptiles and sea monsters and snakes and blood and all kinds of nasty looking stuff. They shoot an arrow into it, but that whole description of that, plus the description that Hrothgar gave, I know it says page 99, but he describes it also there on page 95. So you could use that too. It's all very isolated and foreign looking. It doesn't look like the mead hall and the inhabited place of the humans, and it's all very organic and jagged and dangerous looking. So there on 99, that question is kind of a personal question because it's about number 7, because it's also about what the reader experiences reading that. So I think you kind of like have to visualize it. Obviously, there's that thing people always say, oh, he makes you see it. Yes, of course. But also I think we fear for Beowulf because we know he's already promised that he's going to get Grendel's mother and he's got to jump in there. I mean, I'm not the greatest swimmer, but I definitely wouldn't want to jump in there. So we kind of fear for him. We're going to think, well, okay, he could kill Grendel, but is he good enough to kill Grendel's mother? Is he good enough to be in that environment and still survive, let alone kill her? So I feel like maybe if we're involved in him as a character and we're rooting for him, then we fear that he might not make it out because it seems pretty horrible. But you kind of have to give your own response there on number 7. Okay, let me scroll a little bit here. I think I've answered all the ones that are in the feed. So let me go to email. I haven't seen any more on Twitter, just the one that Andrea sent, and I already answered that one. So on email, Eileen has a question. Let me go to that. It says, can you explain how Hengist, Neft, Finn, and Hildebert are all connect? Oh, okay, like their relationship? Okay, let me see. Let me have a paper here. Okay, so let me click that. Okay. All right, so it's not on the test, but there's this Danish king Hoke, H-O-C. He has 2 kids. One is Hildebert, and the other is Nef. Right? You could make your own little family tree right in your book, like on that spot where the Finn saga is, if you want to. Right? So Hoke has 2 children, Hildebert and Nef, so these 2 are siblings. Right? Hildebert gets married to Finn. Right? Nef becomes king. She leaves over to Friesland. Finn and Hildebert have a son. I don't think they ever say the name of that son. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think they ever give the name of that son. That's why I don't. There is a son, and he gets killed in the first battle. I think the first battle, and but I don't think they ever give his name. Hengist is not related to any of these people. Hengist is some other. Sorry. Hengist is some other noble guy who is sort of the right-hand man to Nef. So he's his helper, his advisor, or whatever. And they both go to war together, right? And when Nef dies, Hengist takes over control of the decision-making for all of the Danes that are there in Friesland because Nef is dead and he can't make any decisions. So he takes over as the new leader. He's the one who decides that they should kill Finn before they leave and all that stuff. He makes the treaty for the winter, etc. So hopefully that little diagram helped. Okay, I think I answered that. Go ahead and post your questions on. I have a cuckoo clock. Everybody in my family has a cuckoo clock. You can post your questions if you have any more on Study Guide 2 or Study Guide 1. Okay, Daniel has a question. Signal problems. Okay. Characterization of Hengist. Okay, well, all right. That's a good question. Hengist is, I think he's probably like an average Dane. I think he's bloodthirsty. He goes with Nef on this revenge battle that they pretend is to visit Hildebert or whatever, and they promise to uphold the treaty, but they don't. So I feel like, in terms of revenge, he's sort of a common Dane in that sense. He's okay with revenge and all that. I think he's also a little bit of a self-starter in that he takes control over when Neff dies. They probably didn't expect that that was going to happen, that the Frisians were going to attack back and kill him. So he takes control of the situation, and so he's not royal, but he's probably kind of a large and in charge kind of guy. I think he's also maybe a little foolish. Um, I don't know what you think you can gain from killing somebody and then running away. I guess they wanted to get revenge for Finn, but it's just that retaliation that we've talked about. We talked about it with Grendel. Grendel, then Beowulf kills Grendel, then Grendel's mother kills Ashera, then Beowulf kills Grendel's mother. It's kind of the same sort of thing. And so that's why the Finn saga kind of foreshadows Grendel's mother showing up. Like, it's not over. There's always another person to get revenge. And in barbaric times, I guess that's how they thought, maybe less sophisticated. And now we're supposed to rise above that and be better people than that, something like that. But we can't put too much of the way we think of things in our civilized way on people who, weren't evolved to that point. And they don't have any fear of the afterlife. Let me point that out. If they're pagans, especially Vikings, their glory as a killing hero is rewarded in their heaven. They're going to go to Valhalla as heroes, the more people they kill in vengeance. So if we put our Christian values on that, that's the opposite, right? Like, that's going to put you in hell. But if you think about it from the Viking warrior's perspective, the way that you'll be remembered by all the people after you die and the way that you'll go into the warrior's heaven in Valhalla is going out as a hero, killing as many bad people or people that you can get revenge on as possible. So it kind of makes sense that Hengist would want to kill Finn in retaliation for the death of Neff, because it makes him a greater hero. I hope that answered your question, Daniel. I don't have any more questions on the email. Let me do a little refresher there. Okay, good. I see your comment on there. That's good. Let's see if I have any Twitter tweets. Twitter tweet us. I sent out a tweet that had list all your questions here if you want. No, I don't see any, just the one. So is there anything else that you want me to talk about? Any questions about the test, how it's constructed, how questions are going to show up on the test? I guess everybody's okay with section 1 because nobody really asked me anything about section 1. Go ahead and send me those if you have anything else you want me to talk about. It's been about 40 minutes. Oh, hi, Mateo. Question 4. All right. 4 is a good one. I like that question. Use the description of Grendel's mother's approach to Harriet to characterize her. All right. Well, you have to go back to, let's find the spot where you would start that. It's after the Finn saga. There's some gifts, etc., etc. There's a little talk in that part. It's not on the test, but there's a little talk on the part of Hrothgar says, "Beowulf, you're like a son to me," and or at least I see your question. I'll be Alex. I see your question too. What would be you should be like a son to me, and Welsh Theo's kind of like you already have sons. What? And then, let me see, I want to find the spot where it does say that the warriors were ready for action, even though they were drinking and so on. On page 87, there's a little foreshadowing of Grendel's mother showing up. Men were drinking wine at the rare feast. How could they know fate, the grim shape of things to come, the threat looming over many thanes as night approached and King Hrothgar prepared to retire to his quarters? They couldn't have known what was going to happen. This is, classic suspense technique. Then you get Grendel's mother attacking or coming on line 1258. Grendel's mother, monstrous hell bride. Oh, that's a good kenning, right? Hell bride. Brooded on her wrongs. She had been forced down into fearful waters, the cold depths, after Cain had killed his father's son, felled his own brother with a sword. So that's a little bit of like history, biblical allusion. She and the others have been forced to live in this isolated place, and so on and so forth. She came to Harrot, bottom of page 89. There inside the hall, the Danes lay asleep, earls who would soon endure a great reversal. Once Grendel's mother attacked and entered her onslaught. The words like onslaught and hell bride and all that stuff make it clear what she's there to do. She's not there just to look and see, who's the guy that killed my son? Oh, I just wanted to look at you, right? Like she's clearly there for revenge. There's an allusion to her that's a really interesting mythological allusion. I don't know if you caught it on page 91. On the third line on page 91, her fury is compared to that of an Amazon warrior. And I don't know if you know the story of the Amazons from mythology. You probably know the story of the Amazons from the Wonder Woman movie, which is partially true. But the Amazons were such a fierce group of warriors. They were all women. They killed all of their boy sons. That's pretty fierce. They were a female tribe. You might ask, well, how did they have children? How did they then procreate? Well, they would go to the neighboring villages and they would rape the men. Yes, I said rape the men, force them to have sex with them, and then kill them. And then they would be impregnated, have children, and they would kill all the boy children and keep all the girl children. That's how they sustain themselves as an all-female race. So already pretty fearsome if you're willing to kill your own baby boy. This is mythological. This isn't historical. So don't freak out. Okay, so also the Amazon warriors were very good archers. And how can I say this? I'm going to say this the most delicate way that I can say it. Amazon warriors chopped off one of their breasts, sheared off one of their breasts so that they would be better at aiming. All the girls know what I'm talking about. If you've ever tried to swing a baseball bat, if you've ever tried to swing a golf club, anything like that, a woman's chest will sometimes get in the way of that. The Amazon warriors needed to keep one breast so that they could feed their babies, but they just took the other one off so that it was easier for them to, point their weapons and so on. Amazon warriors, you do not mess with them at all. So when Grendel's mother is compared to an Amazon warrior, if you know that history, then you can say, oh man, she is not there for fun times, right? She's there and she means business and it's scary. So all that part right there characterizes her as she's on her approach to and entering into the hall. So they compare her to that. They wake up when she's there. They were all drinking and partying and stuff, and they realize that she's there. She grabs a few from the bench and stuff like that. They pick up their weapons. It's all a big panic, and she is desperate to get out because the men are cornering her, and she pounces on one of the people and takes him with her, and it turns out that it's a Shara. So I think her characterization, probably the most powerful for me, is the reference to the Amazon warrior. And I think if you don't know that backstory on them, then like filling that in really helps you understand how fearsome and angry she is as a warrior. So that's section 2, question 4. Okay, the next one, Nick Cannon, section 1, question 13. Oh, okay. A section 1 question. Question 13. In what ways is Beowulf represented as a Christ figure in section 1? Well, all right. The biggest one is, to me, probably the savior part of it. He's coming from nowhere. Nobody asked him to come. Sorry, I think I'm going to need a cough drop. I'm feeling worse and feverish. I can get through this, though. It's worth it if you all can ace the test tomorrow. On Friday, depending. Okay, so Savior. He shows up from out of nowhere. He's not asked to help, but he is there to sacrifice himself to help the Danes. He doesn't limit his abilities in helping others. He doesn't say, sorry, I've got a one monster limit when they come to him to go and fight Grendel's mother. So all those things point to it. Plus, every time he's described, he says stuff like, if it's God's will, then it will happen that way. Or he says he's always like resplendent in his armor. He's like glowing, like he's got a aura about him that's, special. And so for all those reasons, we get the Christ image from him. Thank you, Arlise. Okay. Will the test be open-ended? I don't know what you mean by that. There are 50 questions that are multiple choice. You'll do that part first. There's some matching. There's with the characters. There's some matching with events, like to put events in order. There's like 2 groups of 4 events from the story that are scrambled, and you need to put them in the order that they happened chronologically. That's matching too. And then there's some multiple choice. There's some true false. There's 50 questions like that. Then when you turn that in, you can get your book, and I'm going to give you not an open-ended question, but like a short answer question. So I'm expecting like a paragraph, a good healthy paragraph, or maybe 2, answering the question. I'm going to give you 2 topics, and you're going to choose one. I want you to have the advantage of writing on the one that you think is your strength. So then you write a paragraph answering that one of those questions, whichever of the 2 you would like. So that part of it's more open-ended, plus you can use your book. But I don't know what you mean by open-ended, but that's the part where you can kind of customize your own answer. So if you're not great at multiple choice, then you can do the other. What would be an example of a short answer question? Okay, a good example of a short answer question. This is not one of the questions that will be on the test. I've already written all the tests. There are 4 different tests. It's just 4 different classes. But maybe a question example might be something like, explain some purposes for the digressions in the story. Why are those included? What benefit do they give the story? Or I might ask you to compare and contrast 2 characters that have some overlapping similarities, in a paragraph or 2. In that case, you might set up 2 smaller paragraphs, one that compares the characters and one that contrasts the characters. Or, you can set it up however you want to. It should just be logical. Okay, I think that's all the ones on there, but I think there's another email. I'm juggling all my medias. Question 6 on section 2. All right. Cassie wants to know question 6. Okay. Question 6 on section 2. I know we talked about this in a couple different classes. It says on page 97, Beowulf addresses Hrothgar. Note how Beowulf's tone toward the king has shifted from his earlier address to him. From what to what? Why has this occurred? I think you can notice that on page 97, that's the part after Hrothgar reacts to the death of Ashera. He's beside himself. He talks a lot about death and our purpose for living and, how men mess it up and so on and so forth. Beowulf has to kind of jump in there and tell him, wise sir, do not grieve. It's always better to get revenge, basically, is what he says. Which is kind of against the whole story that he just heard from Finn. That story's kind of telling you don't get revenge, right? So Beowulf, he's young, he's feisty and he wants to prove himself and be a hero. So he says what a hero needs to do is win glory before he dies. And then he addresses Hrothgar directly at the end. I guarantee you she will not get away. Not to dens underground, nor upland groves, nor the ocean floor. I don't care where she goes. I'm going to kill her. Yeah, Beowulf. Go. She'll have nowhere to flee to. Endure your troubles today, he says to Hrothgar. Suck it up. I'm going to take care of business. Bear up and be the man I expect you to be. That is something, we were talking about this in some of the classes, that's something that an older person says to a younger person, right? Like my dad's favorite thing was walk it off, right? I don't care if you got a foot cramp. I don't care if you're bleeding. Walk it off, right? Just suck it up and keep going. And that's kind of what he has to tell Hrothgar. He's reminding him, hey, you're a king. Hey, you're, the leader of your people. You can't just be blubbering. yeah, I know Grendel's got you down and your favorite guy got murdered, but grieve in private. As a leader, you're going to have to be tougher than that. And as a Viking, you're going to have to be tougher than that. And he reminds him that he should suck it up. So his attitude is different. When we first see Beowulf talking to Hrothgar back when he arrives, way back in section 1, Beowulf is kind of like, I'm Beowulf. I'm here to kill your monster. I can do it because I've killed all these other sea monsters, and I'm the son of Ecgtheow. And he's kind of deferential to Hrothgar and respectful. I don't think he's being disrespectful when he says, "Hey, be a king," but I do think that he's, like sort of overstepping his place a little bit. Maybe he's just, trying to help Hrothgar out because it probably is better if he doesn't blubber in front of his people. He wants a blubbery king. All right, we've been here almost an hour. Let's see, there's another comment. It says, so he's basically telling the king not to show weakness. Yeah, in front of his people. He's like, bear up and be the man I expect you to be. You're a hero. Hrothgar was a hero in his own time. He's just sort of deflated now because of Grendel. Yeah, exactly. That's all. Just kidding. I don't see any more comments on the email. Let me refresh the email. Okay, I have a Twitter request. Question 10 on Study Guide 1. Rich wants to know Study Guide 1, question 10. Okay. Question 10, the digression. Okay. Question 10, Study Guide 1. The digression on pages 59 to 61 deals with Sigmund. Explain how this story compares Beowulf to Sigmund and contrasts him with Heremod. Okay. So if you go to, way back to section 1 there, 59. So after Beowulf kills Hrothgar, that is not on the test. After Beowulf kills Grendel, they have that big party, and the minstrel comes in and he sings the story of Sigmund. And if you read the part right above the beginning of the italics part on page 59, it says, he told what he'd heard repeated in songs about Sigmund's exploits, all of those many feats and marvels, the struggles and wanderings of Whale's son, that's Sigmund, things unknown to anyone except to Fitela. We're assuming that whoever is saying this to the people know who those people are. I'm not going to put those people on the test. They killed giants and so on. So Sigmund killed a dragon, and that's a pretty big deal, and probably also foreshadows the killing of the dragon at the end of the book in section 4 when Beowulf kills that. But the reason they say that is because they're trying to compare Beowulf and his defeat of Grendel to the defeat that Sigmund had over the dragon. They're sort of saying, just like our great hero Sigmund, you have done a great thing by saving us. And, sort of like saying you're just like this other hero, which is a reward in itself. Heremod is mentioned. Hrothgar mentions him too later on. King Heremod was overpowered and weakened. He is contrasted with Beowulf, it says in the note there, because he becomes a burden to his own people. And if you read that part there on page 61, you can get that idea. So they're kind of contrasting Beowulf and his great heroic deeds with Heremod, who was not that heroic. But I'm guessing that he was Sigmund's king. All right. I think maybe wrap it up now. I don't have any more tweets. Look through your notes real quick, or if there's any questions about how things are going to be structured on the test. I'll be glad to answer them. I don't see any more emails. I don't see any more tweets. I'm going to go take my NyQuil. Give it another second. There's a little bit of a delay, I think, on the live thing. Any last minute questions? Anybody? Pepper's been listening. He's bored with all this Beowulf talk. All right. Not seeing anything. I will be at school at 7:30. So if there's any last minute questions or anything that you are wondering about, you can shoot me an email. I'll answer you. You can stop by before school and I'll study with you. I don't know. I feel like it's in your hands at this point. I know that you'll study well and be prepared. So all I can say at this point is good luck. Mateo's saying bye. Okay, I guess I'll sign off. Good work, guys. Good questions. I think it was a good session. I'm going to go turn it into a video now so that the people who couldn't be with us can at least watch what we did. So thank you. I'm sure I'll feel fine. It's just a cold. I'm going to start taking some, I don't know, antibiotics, I guess. Mr. Ramos wants me to take one of those Z-Packs. All right, guys. If anything else comes up, just let me know. Otherwise, I'm sure you'll be prepared. Remember our slogan, don't be scared, be prepared. Right? All right. Have a good night, everybody. See you tomorrow.